Good morning, everyone. There we go. So my name is Rick O'Connor. I'm the Executive Director of the new RISC-V Foundation. And I am very, very pleased to be here with each of you to host the first workshop that the foundation is running. The previous two, as you probably know, were put on by the good folks at Berkeley. So not only do they do some pretty cool engineering work, they can run workshops too. But this is the first one that the foundation is running. So we're proud of that. And with that, I'll just jump into it, go through some of the logistics of the workshop, walk through the agenda with you. A little bit of background on RISC-V for those of you that might be new to it. Some of this you've seen, if you've seen Chris to give some of his presentations in the past. And then an overview of the foundation, where we are, what's happened since workshop 2, the structure, a little bit of details on the membership bylaws that we're drafting right now. We're not going to spend a lot of time here because I get to do most of that work on the phone with a bunch of lawyers, which is a lot of fun. And then we'll wrap it up and get into the technical sessions. So first off, great big thank you to our friends here at Oracle. They have donated this facility to us for the 2 days. So we're very appreciative of that. And thank you to Mario and Carrie and the rest of the team that have helped Tammy and I put this together. First and foremost, we're here to learn from each other, right? So it's a networking event. And I know many of you know each other, and that's great. But try not to focus on the people you know. Try to focus on the people you don't know. So first and foremost, the attendee list will be emailed to everybody after the break. If you don't want your name to be included in that list, we gave you that option during registration. You might have overlooked it. But if you don't want your name to be included in that list, let Tammy know before the end of the morning break, and she'll take your name off the list. But otherwise, everybody's going to get an Excel spreadsheet with all the attendee names and contact info. All right? And as I said, for the breaks, we've tried to structure it such that there's good half-hour breaks, in the morning and afternoon, the lunch breaks, our reception during the demo and poster session tonight is 2 hours long. Spend time with people that you don't know, as opposed to spending the time with the people you do know. I think I've got a mistake in the Twitter name. There should be a dash before the V. But our Twitter handle is RISC-V, so feel free to copy or tweet out to the Twitter handle. And we have a RISC-V LinkedIn company page. Obviously, there's really only me and Tammy that are part of the actual organization. But feel free to follow that and go there for information and updates. And we'll be launching an updated RISCV.org website towards the end of January as well. So before we go too far into workshop 3, a little save the date, right? The good folks at MIT have tentatively penciled us into the July 12th and 13th at the CSAIL Status Center facility, which is quite a cool building if you've never been before. Cool campus, if you've never been before. Those buildings aren't really crooked. They are really crooked, but there's nothing wrong with the picture. That's the way it's designed. It's really a cool facility. So this is tentative right now. Just put it in your calendar and pencil, and we'll have updates later as we get this stuff firmed up and clearly let you know when registration's opened up. And that'll probably be in the February-March timeframe. We'll open up registration. So you might have seen some of this from some of Kirsta's stuff before, but in 2010, the team at Berkeley looked at, okay, they've used a bunch of different processor architectures for research and in a pedagogical setting for their programs at school. And they were looking at, okay, what are we going to do next? And clearly, some of the obvious choices were x86 and ARM. And, impossible and mostly impossible in those two cases, and complex and too complex kind of, challenges and certainly IP issues on both. So they said about, okay, well, why don't we just, sort of crank up a little 3-month project here and resurrect some of the older work that we've done and have a clean slate ISA. So that was 2010 with their 3-month project, and then 4 years later, in May of 2014, the initial base spec was released. And lots of work, intervening work and tape outs along the way. Good work, and I think a lot of people were sort of following and looking at it and going, hey, this is kind of cool. So RISC-V, the V, right, it's Roman numeral 5, was chosen as the name because it's really the 5th generation of RISC work that the school had taken on, with RISC-1, part of Patterson and Hennessy's work dating back to 1981. Right, so this stuff's been around for a while in terms of the original work, but that's, in case you didn't know, that's where the name has come from. And then, I guess it was at the first workshop, Kirsta and some of the others invited me to attend the first workshop as an attendee last January, I guess, in Monterey, and started talking about, we have a lot of interest, industry interest, and beyond academic interest in the ISA, and we think we want to create an open standards body, and asked if I'd help do that. And by the time we got to the second workshop in June, we were pretty convinced that that was the way to go. And for those of you that were there, we had a few breakout sessions talking about what that might look like and how we could get started and get off the ground. And then in August of this past summer, in 2015, we filed articles of incorporation. So this is, the RISC-V Foundation is a legal nonprofit organization with legal standing, which is cool. So with that, what are we intending to do, right? So the foundation, it's a nonprofit consortium, right? And we're chartered to standardize and protect the ISA. And just the ISA, and we'll talk about that a little more. But we also want to make sure that we have a strong community of support for both the hardware and software ecosystem around it. And most importantly, we see this as an architecture that can be used in all computing devices, right? So from very deeply embedded IoT kinds of things to really high-end server class processors. So why do we want a viable, what are the benefits from a viable and freely open ISA? Well, we think we can have a tremendous impact on innovation and free open market competition. Right from, what I'm really impressed with since I've been working with the community is the number of, I'm not going to say one-man band, because it might sound a little derogatory, but literally very small team, one-man band kinds of guys doing stuff that is very interesting, and I think can have a significant impact in the community. And when you think about that from a processor design and architecture standpoint, there's not really opportunity to do that with some of the more mainstream cores out there. While we're not going to be focusing on cores and open source cores within the foundation, we really think this platform will provide for the opportunity for open sourcing cores and designs, and there's many of you that are involved in that already. And I mentioned the IoT, down to as little as $1 kind of requirement as well. The biggest challenge with most of these computing platforms is the software, right? We want the software to last for a good long time. And having a common ISA infrastructure that is not controlled by any single entity, but is controlled by the community, can certainly lengthen the viability of that software. And the really interesting part is a lot of the stuff that's going on, by my count, there's something in the range of 30 to 40 educational institutions around the world right now playing with RISC-V. And I think the last bullet is very interesting, right? Make that educational platform far more real in terms of commercial realization, I think can be very interesting. I mentioned earlier, right, so what this foundation is chartered with is the spec for the ISA, not open source cores. There will be open source cores, and we'll have, a lot of, probably a lot of tools and a lot of subgroups that are helping to facilitate that. But when we start talking about the licensing models and the bylaws of the organization, it is around the governance of the ISA. So I guess the number one main principle of the organization is that the ISA will remain free and open and publicly available online for everyone, regardless of whether you're a member or not, right, for use. There'll be some restrictions around use in order to maintain compatibility that we're trying to have, and part of that is going to be we want to. It's interesting, right? It's a little bit of a challenge that we as a community are up against. We want it to be free and available to everyone, but we certainly don't want it to bifurcate and branch and have RISC-V Lite or whatever, right? A whole number of derivatives that inherently end up breaking that compatibility. So, we'll have publicly available test suites, and we also want to encourage people to give back and work into the community, so the trademarks associated with the foundation and the standard will be only available to licensed by members, in particular who have commercially motivated product, right? So if it's a non-commercial project or operation, there'll be the ability to use the name RISC-V and the logos and so on will be there. But if it's commercially motivated, we're going to want you to be a member to be able to have access to that. So the main function, right, is be the official source, right? So the Berkeley guys are fantastic, and part of the challenge for us will be to transition that to get people conditioned to working into the foundation and the organization that results from the foundation as the official source of RISC-V related material, and of which the Berkeley folks will be contributing, but as opposed to, oh, RISC-V, I go to Berkeley, right? So that's not something that's going to happen overnight, but the official source for information about RISC-V, the maintenance of online repositories and everything associated with the specs, and these events will be the purview of the foundation. We're drafting right now an open source licensing model that tries to take the best out of BSD, GPL, Creative Commons, and so on, and has the appropriate treatment for an ISA. I mean, what we're doing actually, which is actually kind of exciting, hasn't been done yet in the industry, right? There is no real open source ISA with a licensing model that lets anybody do whatever they want with it either from a research standpoint or from a commercial standpoint, that will also have long-term viability, right? So it's an interesting challenge and opportunity for all of us. I talked already about the trademarks and licensing of those trademarks. And one of the things that we're also doing, and you'll see it in one of the posters, and the new site will have it as well, is we want to maintain a repository of all public domain ISA literature, any expired patents, just a history. So we already talked about RISC-I and II and SOAR and SPUR and so on in terms of the genealogy. We want to capture where RISC-V came from, right? And as much of the publicly available information around the ISA that we can, and have that available to members as well, to everyone. So how will we be organized? There'll be a board of directors with 7+ members, and the membership will vote on re-election of those. The initial board will be appointed. So right now, the RISC-V Foundation, as an organization, has one sole director, and that's Kirsta. Together with different advisors, we will appoint the initial board based on some of the early support that we've had for launching the foundation. And that board will be appointed with staggered seats. And then subsequent re-election or appointment of new board members will be voted on by the membership. And the board's ultimately responsible for fulfilling the mission of the organization, which will be captured both in the bylaws and the membership agreements that we're drafting right now. One of the things that, probably the most important thing that the board will do is the appointment or creation of these ad hoc committees. So that what I referred to earlier, the technical committee and marketing committee, and subcommittees within the organization. they will ultimately report to the board. In my experience with open standards governance, one of the things that's important is that we have as broad a net of participation as we can, but still have some modicum of control and direction to be able to make decisions and make forward progress, right? So it's almost a conflicting set of requirements and a thin line that we need to walk. But what the board will be doing in terms of these technical and marketing committees, proposals will come from the membership as to, hey, we need to work on this. If we have a number of members that are interested in working on that together, they put together a proposal that goes into either the technical or marketing committee, that gets approved by the board, and then off we go, and there we have it, right? So that work product that comes out of those technical working committees and subcommittees will be ratified by that group and then recommended for release publication to the board. Not sure how this will look right now, but given the global interest that we have in RISC-V, we'll certainly have regional committees and regional chapters to help provide local support in those communities. By the way, all of the discussion around how the foundation is shaped, that what's in these slides, is a work in progress. And questions, comments, criticisms are all welcomed, right? This is not me or Kirsta or Dave or anybody else saying this is the way it's going to be. This is some stuff on the wall. If it sticks, great, we'll go with it. If we want to shape it in different ways, then we will. So membership structure notionally kind of looks like this: platinum, gold, silver, auditing, and individuals, right? So you don't have to be part of a corporation to be a member if that's how you want to participate. Regardless of level of membership, when it comes to either voting on specs or electing board members, it's one company, one vote. So if you're a large organization like maybe the one that we're in today, and there's 50 or 60 people potentially participating in various committees and so on, we don't get 50 or 60 votes on behalf of Oracle, right? Oracle gets one vote on whatever's being voted on at that time. So there's various levels of funding fees suggested here, and part of the stratifying of this structure here is also to back up folks who are interested in chairing task groups, chairing the ad hoc committees, or running for board seats, right? So and all of this can be overridden, if you will, or voted on by the board in terms of if we have a subject matter expert who's an individual contributor and an individual member, and we want that subject matter expert to be a chair of a particular task group, we can decide to do that, right? So this is a normative set of membership classes that will be in the bylaws that we'll work from. So the other part that is kind of interesting, the first year here of getting off the ground, like I said, we created the organization 6 months ago. We have this notion of founding member status, which will run through the first year of operation, where we really want to recognize and thank the entities that have helped us get the foundation off the ground, and that'll run through to the workshop that we're hosting at MIT in July. And so the folks who have helped us so far get started are part of this group. And I'm really, really proud and a little humbled, actually, to say that we have 16 different member companies who have given us cash, right, to help get the foundation off the ground, and given us expertise and support as we've been drafting bylaws and membership agreements. Some feedbacks come sooner than others, and that's okay. But I want to just take a moment to talk through each of these, or to name them at least alphabetically. So there's a bunch of folks in the room here. So BlueSpec and Draper and Google and Hewlett-Packard, Microsemi, Oracle, and Sci5 are all platinum level sponsors, and we're very, very appreciative of that. We have a number of gold and silver sponsors: Ant Micro, Code ASIP, Gray Research, Lattice, Low Risk, ROA Logic, Rumble Development, Centacore, and Technolution. And as I said earlier, I've been pretty impressed with the level of innovation and uptake of the technology. Some of these companies you may have heard of, some of these you may not have heard of, but they just literally come out of the woodwork and start saying, hey, this is great, I want to participate. So thank you to our sponsors. So as I said, we incorporated in August. We are a 501c6 for those of you that care about the IRS designation, nonprofit organization, similar to the NFL. I'm not kidding. The NFL is a 501c6 nonprofit organization. We might not generate the revenue they generate. We have 16 launch fund contributors to date, and they've been helping. At the platinum level, we started at the platinum level with the bylaw review. We'll be extending that to the rest of the group here shortly. And the point of that is we want to get a board of directors in place so that we can get our initial ad hoc committees in place on the technical marketing side, ratify the membership agreements and set of bylaws. So far, when I say they've signed up, what they've signed is a term sheet that says, here, we like what you're doing, take some money and get started. We wanted to get to is a signed or a ratified set of bylaws and a ratified set of membership agreements that subsequent companies that join, say, before the workshop in July, will be signing real membership agreements. There's really two key terms in the membership agreement that we're drafting right now, and that is how the license for the actual ISA and any related technologies, and this is the part that's going to get challenging in terms of what's referred to as the member license and then the core license. So the way that by the way, I should have had this in the slide. We're getting excellent legal advice from one of the larger IP and legal firms in the world, actually, a company called Dentons, here in the Palo Alto office. Stafford Matthews has been a tremendous help to me as we go through this. But the notion is that being a member will mean that it's a license of one, the foundation, to many. And all members will benefit from how that license is structured. And any contributions and improvements that members make that are contributed back, and you don't have to contribute everything, but anything that you do contribute back comes back to the foundation and then goes back into the original member license as a one-to-many distribution. So the member license is that one-to-many distribution, and the core license is what a potential member brings back based on their contribution or improvements that get made to the specification stack. We were having some discussion around how the intellectual property rights and copyrights are licensed and treated in the membership agreement, and whether those should be carved out as separate agreements, just to allow for the upkeep and maintenance of those and potentially individual treatment, but that'll come out in the wash. The bylaws are really the written definition of how we say we want to behave as an organization. So it defines the overall roles of the foundation, all the membership levels that we talked about earlier, what the board does. So one of the things that's an important step is getting close to a set of bylaws and that describes the role of the board in order to be able to then issue invitations for individuals to join the board, because in my opinion, in order to be able to respond to that invitation, you kind of need to know what you're being invited to do. So the bylaws defines that. And also will define committee responsibilities in terms of how the specs are developed, how we're treated. And one of the main tenets that will be in the bylaws is that regardless of the work that's being done, as a minimum, every piece of spec development must go through public consultation. So what that means is outside the membership. And committees can decide to go through multiple stages of public consultation if they want, but as a minimum, before a spec gets ratified, it will have gone through at least one stage of public consultation and review, right? So that's part of the notion of anybody will be able to at least look at this and see it and participate. That's my last slide. So since August, 16 companies billing up to the bar, so thank you very much for that. We got some bylaws and membership stuff underway. Hopefully we'll get the board signed up in January here, and then mark that date down for the 4th workshop.